Shalom and welcome to the One Pasuk podcast, where the rabbis at Congregation Avas Torah each share an insight on one particular pasuk from the parsha and reflect on each other's ideas. Rabbinic banter, I like to call it. I am Chaim Pupko, and I am joined by my dear friends and teammates, Rabbi Daniel Goldberg,
Shalom,
and Rabbi Morty Jesus.
Shalom.
All right, here we go. All right, our one pasuk for this week, the last days of Pesach, comes from Shir Hayam, the song at the sea, which we celebrate on the last days of Pesach. We'll do the first pasuk of the Shira, chapter 15, verse 1, Perek Tesvav, pasuk Aleph. Az yashir Moshe v'nei Yisrael es hashira hazos l'Hashem, vayomru lemor. Then Moshe and Bnei Yisrael sang this song to Hashem, and they said, Ashira l'Hashem ki ga'o ga'ah, Sus v'rochvo rama vayam. I will sing to Hashem, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver he has hurled into the sea.
One obvious observation that's made by many of the great commentaries, Rashi, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, the Ramban, addresses the tense. The Torah uses a future tense. Az yashir Moshe. Then Moshe and the Bnei Yisrael would sing. It should say, as Shar Moshe, they did sing. That's what happened. Or as the Or HaChaim terms it, Vayashar Moshe u'bnei Yisrael. They sang right away. What is the objective? What are we trying to express by using this future tense as opposed to the present tense? And the Or HaChaim HaKadosh explains that each and every one of us have the ability to achieve the level that Bnei Yisrael achieved. At that moment, when we acknowledge the chesed that Borei Olam did on our behalf, at that moment, naturally, what happened was our knee-jerk reaction was to break out in song. And as Yashir Moshe, says the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, is talking to you and me today in the 21st century, where we are acknowledging that our lives are filled with chesed from Borei Olam. And there are times that if we put on those glasses of gratitude and we express and appreciate what it is that God is doing, we too will express our song. And that's why it was written in future tense, because it's not just relevant to Am Yisrael that was standing at the sea at that moment, acknowledging the great chesed of God taking them out, but rather it was the chesed that each and every one of us are the beneficiary of in our lives. As we go through our lives, we experience certain things, and our response should be one in which we acknowledge that chesed and we express our gratitude to Borei Olam by way of shira, by way of song, and therefore it's conveyed in the future tense, speaking to us today as Yashir Moshe.
That's so interesting. And what I love about it is that generally when we study the Torah and we read about events that happened long ago, so we see it as Torah that describes what happened long ago, and then we have to kind of find meaning in it. But what you're saying is that specifically as Yashir, it was given to us long ago, but intentionally to speak to us. The rest of the Torah implicitly speaks to us directly, but Az Yashir explicitly speaks to us. And that's so interesting to think about. It's as if Bnei Yisrael, with divine inspiration, they knew they were speaking to future generations when they sang this. And that's, I don't know, it's just something so interesting to think about.
The past, the present, and the future walked into a bar. It was a tense situation. Rabbi Kisus really enjoyed that. Rabbi Pupko, I feel like he knew. You looked at me like you knew the punchline already, but
I forgot the punchline. Like I knew the setup, I knew the joke. I'm like, oh, I can't remember.
That's pretty good.
I appreciate that. Okay, but I'll dovetail with your observation, Rabbi Kisus, about the tense of this pasuk and the indication that it has a message for us throughout history going forward as Yashir in the future tense. So there's a beautiful medrash that Rabbi Rosner has in his sefer that says, Kol pragmatia shel Moshe lo haisa ela be'az. The whole work, the whole business, the whole preoccupation of Moshe was with Uz. Uz was somehow central to Moshe's life, because it says, Az Yavdil Moshe Shalosh Arim. Then Moshe set aside 3 cities, and then the pasuk says, Az Yashir Moshe. It connects this Az Yashir to Moshe setting aside the 3 Arei Miklat, the 3 cities of refuge in the Transjordan. And of course, the implication of highlighting these 2 Azes is that, if we look at the Az Yashir of the Transjordan, so Moshe, he sets aside the 3 Arei Miklat that are outside of Eretz Yisrael proper, that are in the Transjordan. And in doing so, he's setting the stage for the further completion of the mitzvah on the other side in Eretz Yisrael proper, where another 3 Ari Miklat are going to be set up. So Moshe is doing an act, a concrete act right now, which intrinsically is incomplete, but laying a foundation for the future. And that then dovetails with this Az Yashir. There's a shira here that is kind of blazing a trail and laying the foundation for the future shira of the Jewish people throughout history. And that was Moshe's whole pragmatia. His whole life was being in the present and building now, but understanding that he was sowing seeds for the future. He was right here. Az is right now, but Az is also for the future. And that's a way to live your life, is to think about what am I doing, what does this moment call for, but always thinking about and what are the implications, and how am I setting my children up or the next generation up to succeed. There's an adage, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second to best time to plant a tree is right now. So you're always thinking about the future and taking the steps today to kind of lay that foundation and the path for what comes next. I thought that was very beautiful. Kol pragmatia, his whole preoccupation.
Such a powerful idea. Gives us a strong sense of responsibility as to what we do in the here and the now, being present, being mindful, and recognizing, more importantly, what our actions mean for the future. But what I'm especially happy about, Rabbi Goldberg, is that the Vort matched up to the joke.
No, okay, good.
But I'm curious, if someone were to ask you, like, okay, so Rabbi, so what are you doing to plant for the future?
What am I doing to plan for the future? Is that like a softball for me to talk about a new shul that's opening up on the other side of town?
That's not even what I was thinking about, but yeah.
That's definitely a part of it. But I think that a future focus is part of all of our daily practices and everything that we're doing, right? We're always thinking about, what does this mean for our children? What does this mean for how we're modeling for the next generation?
Instead of putting you on the spot, I guess what I want to say is that I think what's so important about this lesson is that I don't know if I'm always thinking about the future. I mean, I'm thinking about the future in a practical sense, but in terms of the lesson, the idea you're talking about, I don't know if I do.
I disagree. I think you do. I think you do consistently think about the future as a leader of a community and as the head rabbi of a shul of this size. Every time you make a decision, and I've heard this out of your mouth, I can't even tell you how many times, we consider collectively as a group of rabbis that think about decisions that we make on behalf of the community, what this means in the future. How is this going to impact when someone else makes a request of this nature, or we're subject to a similar scenario and our response today was X, how can we do Y in the future? So I think that without even realizing that sense of responsibility that we have as Rabbanim in this community automatically brings with it a realization that our decisions today matter for tomorrow. And so it's important that we think them through and ensure that, to the best of our ability, of course, we're making those decisions. So excuse me for disagreeing with you on air, but I do believe that we think, and especially you, because I've heard it from you many times, about the future implications of our actions.
Point taken. I'll take it. I like that. There's a word in this pasuk that really captured my attention this year more than any other year. It's a prosaic word that kicks off a poem, and that's the word vayomru, or vayomru lemor, because vayomru means to say. It's supposed to mean that they said this poem, this song. But there's a verb to say a song. It's to sing. So why doesn't it say vayashar, putting aside the issue of tense that you guys talked about, az yashir, ashira, I will, but why doesn't it use the verb to sing? Why does it use the verb to say? Seems out of place. And so I was thinking, maybe the idea is that this wasn't a spontaneous burst of inspiration, that these words just came flowing out of their mouths, surprisingly. No, the fact that they sang at this moment is because they had been working on this. They had been preparing for this, that over the course of the Makos, when they had the final preparations for the Pesach Mitzrayim, they were slowly articulating what concepts, what ideas they would use to pay tribute, to sing to Hashem. And so this song required preparation and thought. And so the reason why it says Vayomru lemor is because it was the product of a great deal of thinking and preparation. It wasn't just bursting out in song. And it teaches us, of course, that things that are a product of our creativity and our passion, we may sometimes think that either you have a flash, either you have this creative idea or you don't. But no, anybody who has to present to people, to perform, to entertain, to inspire, we all know that it takes a great deal of effort to come up with something that comes across as passionate and creative. And so I think that's why it uses the word vayomru lemor, because it was really a product of a lot of very serious thinking. And that's what got them to the place where they could accomplish a shira. I will sing. I've thought about this lesson a lot. And one of the things that I like to share with people is that if something takes a lot of work, that doesn't mean you're not good at it. If something takes a lot of effort, that it doesn't mean that it won't be fun and fulfilling. No, just the opposite. That which you invest in more and more and more will be better, and it will be more fulfilling, and it will be more resonant. It'll really come from you and be genuine. And it reminds me of this great quote from Dr. Seuss that Shoshana reminded me of a long time ago. It's fun to have fun, but you have to know how.
Yeah. I think that's such a beautiful and really important idea. I often use the metaphor of playing an instrument.
Yeah.
That it's not fun to learn how to play scales. It's not fun to learn how to play chords. It's not fun to learn theory. But when you see someone who is amazing at, let's say, piano, and they're up there and they're jamming and they're having what seems like an amazing, passionate, in the moment, very present experience of playing and expressing themselves, that's the product of thousands of hours of practicing the tedium and mastery. And with a lot of the practice and mastery and effort, what comes at the end of that is the ability to have this kind of self-expression and passionate presence in a moments where it's like, as Yasher, you could just sing. Well, you don't just sing. First, you have to compose, and then you have to, right?
Exactly.
So, and in our own Yiddishkeit, you put in thousands of hours of effort so that you master, let's say, tefillah or an element of the tefillah, and the words become meaningful to you. And then you can have this kind of passionate moment of davening, and you have that, whatever tefillah it is, it's there for you to have that, to close your eyes and to really call out to Hashem. And that's this amazing moment, but it's the product of all of these other drier moments of putting in that effort, right? And that's true in so many different realms of our religious life.
Which reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that I heard one of the great golf instructors once say: "No one appreciates how much effort it takes to make it look effortless."
Yeah.
It's an enormous amount of hard work, dedication, commitment behind closed doors usually. And then suddenly in the open, when the person's on stage, you're like, wow.
People say that about my wardrobe. They don't understand how much time it takes me to look so effortlessly put together.
I can appreciate that. I'm actually trying to learn these elements myself. So I've been taking notice, and I'm starting to recognize the challenge that it is.
Shkoyach.
Yeah.
Shira Lashem ki yo